What's happening, YouTube? Coming back at you with another video. This is Polymer Clay Artist. I am the guy attached to the hands you see in all those videos. It's been a month since I uploaded a video. Starting right off, I want to apologize about that. I've been busy doing some construction on my mom's house. Been doing some remodeling, helping her out, where I can and everything. But I haven't done absolutely nothing. In the meantime, over the past month, I've been working off and on a single video on making hollow bead cores. Hollowed beads. Ultra light, high strength beads that weigh, hardly anything. I've always wanted to try to do something with the whole hollow bead. Everybody's trying to make them, they have different approaches and all. What I have in this video is actually a work in progress. It could probably be refined a little bit. So the video's a little long, I apologize about that. But here they are. These are two examples. This is a closed vessel bead. It's big. And this is a open-faced. It's basically just bumped out where you have any kind of contour you want. I'm going to show you how I made these. Not the skins to them. There'll be a continuation to this video at the end of the video on Tom's Extras, where I used my hollow beads in a real-world crafting scenario. So if you're interested in that, you can check that out too. I'll leave a link at the end of the video. But anyways, these beads are, I can't weigh them yet. I don't have the means to weigh these, so if I ever get a scale, I'll put the link in the description. They're ultra light. They're very, very light and super, super strong. I feel like I succeeded in this whole hollow bead concept. Looking forward to your opinion on it and what you think. So anyhow, without further ado, let's get started. Alright, these are some of the materials I'm going to be using to make these hollowed bead cores. This here is just a block of wood where I drilled some holes that's large enough to place these stiff galvanized wires down in there freely. That's just to stand the beads up when I'm done. I'll be using these to make the eye pins. This is Apoxie Sculpt. It's a 2-part resin. It's self-hardening. It doesn't require an oven. And I'll be using this Plastalina. It's 1 pound block. It was like $3.57 at Hobby Lobby. It says for sculptors, animators, and artists of all ages. Melting point is 150 degrees Fahrenheit. That's why I'm going to be using this. And it says will never harden in the oven. So I'm going to be using this to form the bead cores. I'll also be using a little sculpting tool, some sandpaper. This is 150 grit, some liquid polymer because I'm actually going to put some cane work on these beads, and I'll be using this to make sure it bonds correctly, and a paintbrush. That's pretty much all the materials I'm going to be using off the top of my head in this video. Normally I would start mixing this up and getting it ready. It has quite a bit of a work window, but being that I haven't really done this before, I'm doing something new, I'm going to shape my bead cores first and get those ready, and then I'll mix up my Apoxie Sculpt. This way I'm 100% sure I'm ready to go. I don't wind up wasting material because I'm not ready. So I'm just going to open this up, and this is going to be terribly simple what I'm doing. This whole concept is pretty simple. I'm just going to cut me off a little bit of this and shape me a decent size big centerpiece bead that you would want to make for a necklace, but you wouldn't want to be so heavy. Just roll it into a ball, kind of teardrop one end of it to get started. I could possibly flatten it a little bit. See, I'm assuming you would already have your design written up somewhere else, on a piece of paper. Me, I don't have a design for a necklace right now. I'm just testing this hollow bead core idea real quick and sharing with you the results. But I will probably be using this in future necklaces I make. I want to start making some jewelry. So I'm shaping up a nice bead core, I guess, and any little changes would have to be made right now. I'm going for a pretty simple shape, I guess. This is more like an egg. I'm going to free it up. It's made a little flat area on the back side, but that's actually pretty cool because you'll want it to sit flat against the skin anyway, so I'll just leave that alone. I'm quite happy with this. This is going to be a good example for a hollow bead core. So my next step would be to insert this galvanized piece of wire into it, about this deep, and it just has to be centered where you would want your eye pin to be, that's a good area right there. I want to put it in there fairly evenly, so I'm just gonna eye it in a way where I can see what I'm doing and insert this like that. You can see how it turned out. Pretty good, pretty good. I like it. So this is going to be a closed vessel hollow bead when I'm done. The next step would be to mix up my Apoxie Sculpt. I would like to take things a little further and do not just a closed vessel, but an open face bead core. To do that, you would roll it into a ball again, and you would come up with the shape, whatever shape. I'm not putting too much thought into these designs and shapes because I'm just exploring this whole hollow bead core thing once again. It probably would help if I used Polymer Clay roller here to help get a sense of what's going on. Okay, so this is a fairly large centerpiece charm type necklace item. This would favor some like surface detail, like maybe a design or something. And of course you would have your other beads. One thing I would like to mention, the smaller the bead you're trying to do this, the more the diminishing the results will be. So now I have a closed vessel and an open-faced bead core that I'm going to cover with the Apoxie Sculpt. A better way to explain what these are is to consider this the inside negative space, the hollow area of a bead. It's like the void area, and then the skin that goes around it will actually be your bead. When this is covered in the other material, this inner part will be removed, reducing the weight of the bead. Something to consider, this actually needs to be a little bit smaller than the size of the bead that you're wanting to achieve, because this will have to be, there'll be a layer of Apoxie Sculpt, and then you'll have your layer of Polymer Clay, whatever kind of cane work you'll put on there. And you can see this bead right here is about 3/4 inches high. It's a little bit too high. To reduce the height, I'll just cut back using this palette knife. I'll cut some of this clay off. Now if you look at the height of that, it's a little bit better. And then I'll fix the edges to where they're not so bad anymore. Doesn't have to be entirely perfect because of that layer of clay that's going to go on there. I could also reduce the height by cutting the back side of this a little bit. Let me go ahead and try that. It's still going to be a rather large bead once it's done, but I'm trying to show you you can make large beads. Anyways, something else I wanted to do with this one is I wanted to fix the edge right here on both sides. See how it's not filled in? I'm just going to fill that in real quick. Now I feel both of these little pieces are ready for the next step, so I'll go ahead and mix up that Apoxie Sculpt. Okay, I have 2 equal amounts. This doesn't seem to be that much of that material. I have quite a bit left still. And when these two are mixed together, which is what I'm fixing to do, it'll be even more material to work with. But I'm going to try to do these 2 beads with just this. If I need to make a little more, I'll make a little more. I know one bead is bigger than the other, so I'll just make one slightly larger than the other. So I'm going to spread this out using this Polymer Clay roller. I don't know if I can put this through the Apoxie machine, and it would seem you can use the Apoxie machine on this. That is awesome. Or at least I did successfully. I don't know if this is going to get gummed up in your Apoxie machine or not. It worked for me just now. Now I'm going to cut these ragged edges off. And I'm going to take this and work it on there. I'm going to cover this whole thing except for just a little edge around this where the wire is. You'll see later why. I'm actually using the thinnest setting on this Apoxie machine to cut this. It's okay if it overlaps a little bit because I'm going to do a light sanding afterwards. I'm trying to take off the overlap the best I can in the areas that I see that I can do it. The stuff is highly adhesive though, so it sticks to itself really, really well, as you can see. Part of that just came off. I'll just work this flat here and then stick some more back in there in that hole. One final little piece around the opening. We'll finish this one up. This is overlapping a little bit. That's okay. See how small this hole is? It's not a very big one. This is going to allow this material that I just covered up to pour out once I put this in the oven at 150 degrees. I don't know if you just had an aha moment, but that's the trick to this. And this right here doesn't need to cure in the oven itself. It'll just cure just like this. And this stuff is really, really strong. It has good high strength, and I'm using the thinnest setting on the pasta machine, which is something sensible for you to use like a systematic, method. You could just crank out a bunch of these big hollow beads. Alright, final little touch-ups. I'm just kind of dabbing all around with my magical thumbs, and we don't really have to put it in this wood. I'm going to just let it cure. That way it doesn't have a resting place on it. So it's just in that wood. For this next one though, the stuff won't need to be poured out of it. It can be dug out of it from the backside. I just want to take something that's blunt and round, kind of like this, and I'm going to just lightly strike the bottom all the way around like that. It's smeared onto the marble a little bit, but that's fine. There's a little rut down there, like a channel. Now I'm just going to take some of this 2-part epoxy and I'm going to roll out a long teeny snake. Will that do it? That'll do it. I'm going to cut this edge where they come together. I'm working those 2 parts together. Try not to damage the mold thing. I'm going to mix me up a little bit more of this. Roll out one big sheet and cover this. To explain that, I forgot to explain that. That ring that we just put around that, it's going to act as structural integrity. It's going to add strength around the rim on the back side of this. Right here, which is where the eye pin and stuff will be, I want to reinforce that and add just this extra little strip this week on how it's made. There. You see this little eye pin I made? I just took one of these. You could use a paper clip if you want, but I think the paper clip would rust. This is better material, and I know they got a better tool for this, but I can't find it. So I'm just going to twist this. Of course you can use pliers, it'll be easier. You want it to where it'll sit like that on the neck. So I'm going to bend it in such a way to, here, look at the side. See the side view of it now? See how that's shaped? What I'm trying to do is stick it on right here like this, but I'm going to keep bending it to where it's angled, where I can bury it in that epoxy. Okay, see what I got going on now? Once again, I'll test fit it. It needs a little more bend, a sharper bend anyways. That's it. See what's going on there? There's not much to that. That's pretty simple. Now I'm going to take a little bit extra and cover that. I'm trying to just bring these areas together, the surfaces and stuff, to make it to where it's not so noticeable, this thing that we just put on the front of here. So I'll lay this here, center it up where I know I'll go all the way around. Now following this line, you can see where the little snake that we laid down earlier, I'm going to cut along it. This clay I laid down just now is overlapping with that snake. This part will bond to that tiny snake right here perfectly. So now I just continue working this on all the way around. Right now is the time to work out any air bubbles if you find them. You simply just poke a little hole and work it to that, to work it out. And then once I get it secured all the way around, trim it all the way off, and that's pretty much all there is to skinning this. Yeah, that's quite a bit of clay that I had left over, but I can easily just make me some fangs or some claws or something. Okay, so this has had plenty of time to cure. It really only needs 24 hours to completely cure, but I've given this a week. It's been a whole week because I've been a little bit busy. I did overshoot how much I need and had some extra left over. I just wound up making just some claws. I got 6 extra claws out of that. Isn't that pretty cool? This is just trying to show you that you don't really waste it. You can just make little things that you can use for other projects. I'll definitely use this for something else. So the next step would be to remove the Plastalina core from these 2 core beads. This open face will be easy. I'm just going to take this tool and dig it out from the back side of it. Now I've already tested these bead things that I made, and they are quite strong. They seem to hold a lot of weight. It's real clingy, so I'm being careful not to force it too much. It might be easier just to melt these out too, since that seems to be the function of the clay. As it gets hot, once it reaches 150 degrees, it turns to a liquid state. I'm definitely going to do that for the other bead because I can't get it through that tiny hole. For this other piece, I'm going to have to use the oven to get this Plastalina out of here, but I'm just going to pull this out. And I have this other little thingamajig, something simple, just to stand the bead up. And I'll stick this in here like that, and just set this in something clean that will capture all that clay. This should all melt right out that hole right here, in theory. So while that's melting out, I'll clean this with maybe some Dawn, some hot water and some Dawn, and while it's wet, I could sand this outer edge just to scuff up the surface to make whatever materials you're using. Like if you're using a glue, it'll help everything to bond together properly. But this is extremely light. You can hear how light. It's as light as it sounds, which is fantastic because look how big and grand it is. And that's the point. Big beautiful jewelry or costume jewelry that's strong, extremely strong, and lightweight, almost weighs nothing. So let me wash this in the sink, get it all cleaned up, and I'll stick this in the oven at 150 degrees and see what happens, and I'll show you the stuff where it melts out. Okay, this just recently came out of the oven at 350 degrees, and I'm using this tool. I stuck this in there, and I'm just wiggling it and wiggling it, and it doesn't quite go to a complete liquid state. I didn't want to risk raising the heat, but most of it came out, a lot of it came out in a bowl too. The rest of it seems to be coming out onto this, and it's forming this crazy organic looking thing on this tool. It's very, very crazy looking. It's like a hand coming out of this thing almost. This stuff is extremely hot. I got a towel wrapped around it holding it. I don't know, it seems to be a very, very slow melting. Maybe I didn't have enough patience. See it drip? See it just dripped out of there? So it's really, really hot. This stuff burns. I don't know if this is a conventional thing to do this. It might be a labor of love, but I will eventually get all of this stuff out of here, and what I'll have is a hollow bead in the process. Now I'm using this tool right here and I'm just reaching in there and pulling back, and it seems to be coming out really nice. So maybe it's a combination of melting it and scraping it out. It's super soft in there. Actually, I feel a lot better about this now. I was kind of worried. I thought this was a bust because it wouldn't melt out of it. It says on the package, melting point is 150 degrees. I'll have to argue with that. It took quite a bit more temperature and it didn't actually melt. It just turned to a little pasty. Some of it melted. Teeny bit did. Okay, here's the verdict. This is actually not that bad. You heat this up to where it's, you know, between 150 and 250, whatever it takes, to where you kind of see it oozing out a little bit, and then you hold it with a rag and just take a tool like this. Make sure the hole's big enough to fit the tool in there, and I was just digging this out quite easily. It just comes out in little chunks, and I got all of this out of there. So it's not quite that bad. You could probably poke a little hole in the top of it while it's still, you know, not cured, or if it's already cured, you could drill maybe a tiny hole to help maybe drain it a little bit. Other than that, I can't think of anything else. If y'all guys can think of anything that would help this come out more efficiently, you know, faster, that would be kind of cool. It's definitely doable, especially, you know, using the tool. The only thing left to do is to close up the hole and add your eye pin. To do that, you're going to take that same thing we made earlier, but I want to bend this over, like almost in half. Here, side view. Side view always works. I just wanted to bend it over a little bit to give it something to bite onto. And I've mixed up some more of the Apoxie Sculpt. So what I'm going to do is just stick it on here and work it on there very well. And then work that down into this bead. Then I kind of rub away the excess while it's not really set up yet at all. I just mixed this. So you may choose to resand this, kind of refine it. So there you have it. That's a closed vessel bead core, hollow, super light. It's ridiculous how light this is, and it's really strong. Well guys, that's pretty much it for this video. You have made it to the end. Here's the link to Tom's Extras where this story continues. I used these 2 beads I just created in a real-world crafting situation. Feel free to check that out. I really appreciate everybody for taking the time to watch this. It means everything. And until next time, I will see you here again soon. Thank you so much for watching.